Our scripture this morning is from Matthew. It's chapter 24, verses 36 through 44. But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken, and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken, and one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour.
We're going to start today with a very easy class participation exercise. Very easy, and there's no wrong answer except for the wrong ones, which are every other answer besides the one I want. And it's not a trick question, but I want you to all shout as loud as you want, unless it's really loud, and then just reasonable volume. And to say what you think the answer is as quick as you can. Okay, so this is about a speed thing, and it's not a trick question, so you don't have to think too much. Okay, you guys, everybody ready? What do you do at a green light? What do you do at a red light? What do you do at a yellow light? There seems to be some confusion here. Green light, red light, yellow light. I'm hearing a bunch of different answers. Am I wrong here? It's like, doesn't seem like we're in agreement. We got the green light down. We know to go. We see that green light, and our foot starts to shift a little bit, just instantly. We go from that brake to that accelerator. We see that red light, and whoop, got to get that stop, right? Get that brake, and it shifts the other direction. And then we hit the yellow light. And the yellow light means we have to do what none of us, especially the guys, like to do. We have to think. That's right. We don't like to think, but now there's a judgment call that we have to make. And the judgment is, are there police in the area? That's not come on, let's be honest here. This is about being real, okay? We're being raw here. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know about you. It's, are there police there? If there are, I'm pretty sure no police there, it's go and go as fast as you can. And if there might be cops there, then it's red, stop. We're making that discernment of that yellow light because we don't really know when it's going to change. And I don't know if you're like me. How many are like me and they love green? They're even okay with red, but they hate that yellow in their life. That ambiguity of not knowing whether we're supposed to go on the accelerator or the brake. You tell me it's time to rest, I'll rest. You tell me it's time to fight, I'll fight. But you give me this kind of like, I don't know, you got to make your call yourself. I'm thinking, oh man, I got to use the thing between my ears again. And then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what should I do in this? And there's all these different things that are these calculations that have to be computed. How long is the yellow light? There are some people that time out yellow lights to know how long they last, because just because the government doesn't like you, they have set yellow lights different for different traffic stops. You notice this? You go to a different town and all of a sudden the yellow light is a different time than it was in the town that you grew up in, which is clearly the proper town, and the proper timing, the new timing was wrong. That's wrong timing. But some people plan it out, and they actually even plan out how to get to work to not hit any of those red lights, and they just kind of pace themselves at the right moment. These are wise people that have too much time on their hands. Very smart solving stupid problems, but they are figuring that solution out on how to get there. Now, I'm an analytical person, so I hate yellow because this ambiguity is totally uncomfortable with me. I want the answer, I want it to be clear, and I want it to be very specific so I can just hit that green light, get where I need to go. I know that there's different things that are more complicated than traffic lights in our lives. Some of these things are like the people that we talked about when we look to the left, look to the right. These people around you are a little bit more complicated than traffic lights, but they still have signals. Especially women, they have signals that they're telling you whether to go or to stop. And I, for one, am really bad at reading these signals. Anyone else with me here? Are you saying that you're bad too, or that I'm really bad? Are you confirming that I'm bad? I'm not sure now. There was ambiguity in my sentence, or a little of both, okay. I noticed that there was a lot of guys who raised their hand and not many women. Women are better at reading these signals. They just are. I mean, most women at least are much better at reading the signals of go and stop. I am particularly bad at reading these signals. Now, I've figured out traffic pretty well at this point, but I'm still working on people. I'm very bad at people and knowing when the signal, and I'll give you an example because you're all thinking, yeah, he seems okay, maybe, and maybe you're not, I don't know. It depends on how long you've known me, but I'm going to give you a story that expresses just how good I am at reading signals from people. I was at a bar, and I do go to bars a lot, and I meet people, and it's a great experience, a great opportunity. You might have, maybe I met you at a bar. A lot of the people here I've met at a bar, but I went up to this one guy, and I met him. And I was wearing a collar at the time, as some pastors do, so it was a pastor's collar. So clearly I was not a bowler, okay? So I go up to him, and I'm wearing this collar, and he says, "Are you a pastor?" Now, I'm toning the language down a little bit because there was a lot of, well, to quote Simon and Garfunkel, words I never read in no Bible. But he was saying that, "Are you a blank pastor?" And I'm like, I don't know what a blank pastor is, but I am a unblank pastor. And he said, what, blank are you doing in a bar? And, I said, what are you doing in a bar? And he's like, well, I'm talking to people and I'm drinking. And I said, well, that's what I'm doing in a bar. What a coincidence. And then I noticed something, because at this point, his fist was like this, and then it moved back, and then it started to do this thing in this kind of ball format that, must, I don't know, have been there because maybe as a tick. Could have been many reasons why all of a sudden this went very firm and coiled. And then he started saying, "Get the blank out of my face." Now, I wasn't sure exactly what that one meant, so I prodded a little bit more. What do you mean? What's wrong? And then I saw the hand get back a little bit further than it was before. And he said, "You better get the blank out of my face now." And so I said, okay, there seems to be a problem here. I must not be communicating properly. Maybe I didn't explain the drinking and the talking to people aspect, or maybe I didn't explain the pastor aspect. So I'm calculating which I should be trying to communicate about right now. And then he said, "I'm going to blank you in your blanking face if you don't get the blank out of here now." Yeah, he is. Way too much. Yeah. So at this point, I decide that I need to discern what's going on here. So I start thinking. It sounded a little bit like this. Oh, there we go. That's my dial-up. That's my brain. That's the speed of my brain here. And then I go, I Google that, and I think, okay, what do these signs all mean together? And then I realize something. He's going to punch me in the face. And I decide that I need to back away. Actually, and to be completely honest about this situation, and this is a true story, there actually was another person that helped me figure it out, that just like went to me and said, I think you better leave. And then I went, I think you're right. By my calculations, you are correct. And so I walked away with him. So I went away from that situation, and that is about the speed that I figure it out. Now, thankfully, if that person helped me, I might have gotten punched in the face first and then said, wait a second, you don't like me, do you? You want me to leave. Like, you just hit me in the face. But this is the slowness that my brain is good at computing things. It just takes a really long time to figure some of these things out because of trying to read people and understand what's going on with them. Now, people are complicated, but it's really important to be able to discern when someone's going to punch you in the face. Right? Does anyone agree here? That's a good skill set to develop. Now, we talk a lot about not judging people, and we think it's really important to not judge people. But it's still also important not to get punched in the face when you don't have to. So these are both valid statements. And in between these two statements is a thing that I like to call discernment. See, I don't know what was going on with that guy to this day. I think that the alcohol might have part of, the situation there. Might have to be in the calculations of why he wanted to punch me in the face. But I don't know. I don't know his life story. I don't know what's happened with him. And so I can't judge him. It would be wrong of me to judge him, but it is right of me to discern that I should back away. Did you notice that distinction? I think it's a distinction that in that example is pretty obvious, but in many situations we seem to have a really big problem with, especially in the church. Because I hear a lot of people say, oh no, we have to judge. We're supposed to judge. And then when they talk about what they're supposed to do, they're talking about discernment, of knowing when to do something. And the big difference between judgment and discernment is, judgment, I'm judging who you are. Discernment, I'm discerning what I should do. Does that make it clear? Like, I never get to tell a sentence on you. I know that I'm slightly higher than you all right now because I'm on this stage here, but that doesn't make me above you. And I don't ever get to make a statement of like, you are this, and that's just who you are as a person. That's not my job. People said you should never judge a book by its cover. Well, we're going to test that theory today. So I brought some books. Okay, first book. Oh, let me not do this one first. We're going to start with this one. Okay, first book. We got this book here, okay? I don't know if you can see it. I tried to get pretty big books, but it's got this kind of wrench thing and an egg, and the egg is cracking. And part of the words are, part of the book cover, so we can use those. Capture, it says. Unraveling the Mystery of Mental Suffering. Does anyone have a guess on what this book is about?
It's about
Pac-Man's life. I'm not going to say that you're wrong, because maybe that would be a judgment. But I'm discerning that you might need to look more at the clues. You haven't... Well played, my friend. Well played. That's true. Unraveling the Mystery of Mental Suffering. The History of Richard Dempsey. Yeah. Not a bad guess. You're getting closer. Anybody else have a capture? Mental health. Okay. Well, I've read some of this book, and I think that that's a pretty good statement, pretty good judgment of the book. Well, you did okay there. 2 wrong guesses, but 1 good one. Okay, so we'll go to another one. This one is called The Gene, an intimate history, as opposed to a unintimate history of the gene, when we want to get close to our genes. Okay, this is written by Siddhartha Mukherjee. That's how you pronounce his name. Trust me, I mumble. Okay? Anyone have a guess on what the gene is about? Or do I need to read more? I need to stop calling on you. That's what needs to happen. It's a science book, okay? So the gene is about chromosomes, close. The genetics, yeah, okay, genetics. That's where we get genetics from, gene. Okay, I could have been pal of pants. I don't know how to spell. Okay, so, right, but that's a pretty good judgment of the book. Okay, let's go. We're going to another one. Okay, this one is one that I love. This is one of my favorite books. This book, and can you see it? Yeah, Count of Monte Cristo. Okay, so it's got a big ship here, a map, somebody's fencing. It's got a cross on it, as little musket shooter things, and treasure. So anybody have an idea of what this book is about? The Count of Monte Cristo. Okay, anyone who hasn't read The Count of Monte Cristo, have a guess on this? June? You never? Oh, you're just saying you never read it. Okay. Does anyone have a guess what it's about? Oh, Bima, no, you down with you, Diane. You are really good at reading covers. All right, we're going to go simpler. By the way, A star on that one. Okay, so here's another one. It's given to me by a friend. Okay, it's got this random dots on the cover that form a face. And then it says, Bob Dylan, all the songs. Can anyone judge what this book is about? Really? Do you have a guess? Songs. It's about songs, specifically by Bob Dylan. Okay? One more. This one. Anybody? The Bible. My King James Bible that I keep with my rifle. Right? Okay, so this is my Bible, okay? Anybody have a book? Yeah? Things about God. Let's get a hand for him. That's right. You are 100% correct. Some of you are not good and maybe shouldn't judge books by their covers, but most of us do. How many, when you go into a bookstore, you judge a book by its cover? Okay, how many of you remember when we had bookstores? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, and I will actually say this, too. I was one of the people that were like, books should only be digital. I was one of those people. And then I started, like, actually collecting books, and I've changed my mind completely. Because it's like there's these beautiful books like this, and it's just when you open them, you know, anyone remember that smell when you walk into a bookstore? They have not figured out how to get that into an iPad yet. It's not the same thing. It's really not. These books are treasures. One of my favorite books is a book, Fahrenheit 451, I think, but I'm not good at numbers. But Fahrenheit 451, which is about this group that starts burning these books, and they make books illegal. This is written years ago about how eventually books won't be used in society anymore. And their theory was that it was going to have to take a government that made it illegal. What ended up happening is we didn't even need the government to do it. We just stopped reading. We just started watching television so much we stopped reading. I know, not good. There's a lot of good stuff in these things. Not just about fun, but about life, about truth. And there's so much we can learn from reading these stories. Even the fictions have so much truth in it, like this one. There's so much you can gain from these books, and we really should read. I'm okay with Audible or some kind of audio book if that's where if it's better for you to read there, because for centuries, that's how people read. Books themselves were expensive, so what that people end up doing is they end up memorizing these stories, and they would pass down stories about truth from generation to generation, just telling them with their words. We're going to get to just a glimpse in a second about one of the most famous stories of all time, which is the story of a worldwide flood. And the reason why that's the most famous story of all time is because it's told in every single major culture from every different corner of the globe. I don't know if you knew that, but every religion, pretty much every major religion has a worldwide flood story, at least the older ones. Scientology, I don't know about that one. But most of them have a worldwide flood story. Every mythology has a worldwide flood story. Coincidence? I think so. Okay, so we've got these books in it. Now, what's another expression that we have a lot? There's another expression that we have is that my life is like an open book. Okay. People are a lot like books in that you don't want to judge them by their cover. But with the first thing you see is what? Their cover. Now, some people, they end up going through difficulties in life where they feel like they're a weirdo, like they don't fit. Maybe they've had someone be mean to them, cruel to them, they've been hurt, they've been wounded, and at a certain point, you know what they do to that open book that their life is like? They close it up. They close it up. Why? Because they feel hurt. And then they feel like now all these inner thoughts, these inner feelings of who they really are, no one can get to, so no one can hurt. The problem is, what do people have left to judge you on? Your cover. I think that books are, by the way, welcome, have a seat. It's good to have you guys here. You're never late here. You're just more loved. Okay? So I think people are far more complicated than books. Huh? Anybody? People more complicated than books? Anyone agree? In fact, I think books are the only thing we can judge by their covers. Because you read a book maybe once, maybe 3 times, probably no more than 4 or 5. Except for Marcy, who's probably read books 20 times. But most people have probably who's read a book more than 5 times other than the Bible? Really? Okay, 3. Unless we're talking about children's books. And then I've read a lot of them. But anyway, okay. In this, we definitely don't read them much, but we see them on the bookshelf all the time. See, that's different than with the people in our life. The people with our life, we should be reading those on a regular basis. And as valuable as I think books are, you know what are far more valuable? People. Their stories are more epic. Their adventures more wonderful. And we really need to read these. But the thing that has to happen is that we have to open them up. And you have to be willing to open up your story, to open up who you are and to start to read these stories. And you have to be willing to read other people's stories. Because you can learn some things that you can't get from personal experience by reading other people's stories. Now, you will never fully understand someone different than yourself. You can never read their entire book. You can never know everything about them, but you can learn enough. How much do I know about being black in America? Not a lot, but everything I know comes from the friends that have been really close to me that do know what that's like. And that's a valuable thing that I can't get from personal experience. I can get from opening myself up to a relationship with someone who's a different story than me. And not just that, I mean, I don't know what it's like to like country music. That baffles me more than anything else. And so I have to read that book and go, huh, you like that twang, huh? Even though it's not a note? Okay. So, in life, we gain from reading that. And I have to say, for me, the story that I have gained most from, the book that I've gained most from, is the Bible. I know, Christian Answer, goody two-shoes pastor, but this has got the most truth in it in my life that has done the most good. And when applied to my life, it changes things. But just like in people, there's yellow in this book too. There's these yellow lights, these things that are ambiguous that we can't fully understand, and so we're confused when we read them. We just read a story about this person who is taken up. There are two people working in a field, one's taken up and one's not. What do we call that event? Well, some people do. How many people have heard of the rapture before, this idea of rapture? Okay. This is an area that I am not an expert in, so I confess that, and many of you will probably disagree with me. That's okay too. But this is on my yellow light shelf because I don't think I know what's going to happen. I don't think it's clear, and I don't think we're supposed to. I think that's kind of the point of the verse. So I'm comfortable with this being a puzzle, something ambiguous, something obscure, something that I fully don't understand. But one day, my friend came up to me and he goes, "Yeah, you heard about the rapture thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're all one of the Christians is going to be taken up to where? Heaven, and everyone else is going to be where? Earth." Okay, so this is the universal rapture story, and he said, "What about the reverse rapture?" What? I didn't know what he was talking about. So he goes to the verse and he goes, "Okay, so in the time of Noah, there were people that were having relationships and hanging out and having good times and all this stuff like that. Now, for those of you who are Bible scholars, were these people the good people or the bad people? Bad people, okay? And then they were taken. Were they taken up to heaven? Nope. All right, okay, in the story of the global flood, which again, the most famous story in all of mythology, in all everything, in all history of all religions, is a story told in every single one of them. So anyway, so there's this flood, and then he says, like in the days of this flood, people will be doing their stuff, and then one will be taken, one will be left. Why do we assume that it's the good person taken? I'm glad we've come to consensus. So then after that, at the end of it, just to make it clear, it says, where the bodies lie, there the vultures will gather. Sounds like heaven to me. The subject never changes, by the way. The subject, according to this theory called the reverse rapture, is the wicked. And what it comes down to, if you look, by the way, if you go throughout the Bible, you'll see a lot of things that said, the wicked will perish and the righteous will inherit the earth. So that's a consistent theme. Now listen, I'm not trying to get into theological debate about what's going to happen in the end of times. Every generation, by the way, from early Christianity thought that this was the end of times. Every single one of them. So what are the odds that you are right if you think that this is the last generation? 100%, it's you. You're always right. See, we have this confirmation bias that we always believe our opinions are more likely to be true than anyone else's opinions. That's why we have them as our opinions. Everybody thinks that they're right, and that's okay. Because if we didn't, we'd have to question everything. And I say this as a natural skeptic, but here's the thing. No doubt is dangerous. Absolute surety and confidence in what you feel is dangerous. But a lot of doubt is just as dangerous. The key is to have a little bit of doubt. See, a little bit of doubt makes us continue to question, maybe I'm wrong, this is what I think, but we keep moving forward. A lot of doubt paralyzes us in our life. What's the point of doing anything if we have all this doubt? It's too much doubt. A lot of doubt means that we don't even get out of bed. A little doubt means that we might test the floor to see if there's nothing under there that we might step on, or the floor is secure. And no doubt is just we jump, do it, right? How many here have at least been at one point in their life the no doubt person? You like Gwen Stefani too? She's pretty good. Anyway, okay, the no doubt person, when I was a kid, I have very little risk aversion, unfortunately. That's why I almost got punched in the face earlier. It's because I don't have that thing that says, warning, tiger, get out of here, run away. So I have that. In other areas of my life, I have lots of doubt, so I'm weird. But in so many areas in my life, I just do it. Have you ever heard of YOLO? Thank God that's not really a thing anymore. But anyone hear of YOLO? YOLO stands for what? You only live once. There are so many teenagers that died after sending a text that said YOLO. One of their favorite things to do, you know, in Teen Wolf, when the Michael J. Fox was like riding on the van and he was like surfing on the top of the van. No, you guys didn't have a childhood? Come on. Okay, so they did that, but they weren't a werewolf with amazing agility ability, and no one was driving the car. They would go out of their car while it was moving and stand on it and surf on it. Then the car would go into a ditch, because cars don't magically drive themselves. Apple hasn't done that yet. Give it a few years. And then they would fall into that ditch. They would fly in. They would die. YOLO. I go a different direction with you only live once. I think you only live once, so you might as well live a long, healthy, happy life where you learn as much as possible, where you get to discover as much truth as possible, knowing that you're not going to figure it all out, where you get to be the best person that you can possible, know that you're never going to be perfect, but you get to grow in this journey of life. Now, I hate yellow lights. We talked about that. I hate yellow lights. I want it to be green or red. So this verse and others like it that are in this kind of confusing point for me are easy for me to just want to not deal with. But the point of this verse, which I think is ironic by the way that the people that are trying to fix this verse, that are trying to solve it, because Jesus says, no one's going to know the time, not even me. And then they say, oh yeah? I'll figure it out. I just said no one's going to know the time, not even me. It's like, done. I was hearing this guy give this TED talk about the importance of doubt. And he was talking about when he was at Y2K, and he got together in this church, and they all gathered together because they were 100% convinced, no doubt, it was the end of the world. So they waited for the time to tick, and then the clock ticked, and they started weeping. Weeping because their Lord did not come. Weeping because they had more life to live. It's funny because when a person that had cancer is told by a doctor that they're going to live, they usually are weeping with joy, but these people were weeping with sorrow. They had so convinced themselves of what is right that when it was wrong, they were devastated. So they drove home, and the guy was sharing, it wasn't until I was on my way home that I realized how weird it would be for Jesus to come back at each different time zone again and again and again at the clock of midnight. See, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that can be the scariest thing for us as we're driving up and we see that yellow light. But it can also give us the most hope if we have the right perspective. Let me explain what I mean. When I was a child, I had migraines, chronic headaches and migraines. And I don't say this at all to be cruel, but please don't, after the sermon, tell me what I should do to get rid of the migraines or headaches. Just, I've done a lot to try to figure out the solution. I think that in time I won't have to have the migraines and headaches anymore. But I had them since I was a child. And I had daily chronic pain. Because I had daily chronic pain, I didn't really relate to my peers. So I didn't have any friends. I had my brothers. They hung out with me when I begged them to. But that was about it. And life was pain. Now, I immediately searched after truth a lot. Because I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to live and life is so painful, I need a purpose. What is this life all about? So I studied a lot of God, and I studied a lot of philosophy and theology. I was a very strange kid. I'm talking, by the way, elementary school. I'm a strange adult now, though. I've changed, majorly changed in my life. But at a certain point, and most of the time I was okay, because I felt like I was finding purpose. I felt like I was finding meaning. And that was my conversation that I had with God a lot. Sometimes I asked why on the bad days. Why, God? Why me, God? But most days it was what? What can I do? What can I learn? Maybe how? How can I grow? How can I make the most given the limitations that I have? And that question helped a lot in those difficult days. But there were some days that life was just too painful. And one day in particular, I decided that this would be better if I just ended it all. If I just ended this journey, it was just too painful. Nobody cared about me. So I decided that I was going to go on a walk, which, by the way, I knew on the good days that people did care about me. It's only the bad days that you don't believe that. But I decided to go on a walk and jump in front of a car. And so this was my plan. I thought of the details. I knew that the road that was the closest fast road to my house. I was in 5th grade at the time. So I'm walking there, and as I'm walking, I don't think I'm crying or anything like that. I just was mad and angry and in pain, and I was ready for it to be done. And my brother John Peter happened to be driving by. Now, my brother John Peter was 16 at the time. And how many 16-year-olds want to hang out with their 10-year-old brother? Exactly, not even any of you. Neither did John Peter. He never hung out with me. He never. Why would he want to? Now, he had a youth minister at the time that was kind of like his big brother guy, and he was going there. So he pulled over, and he said, "Hey, Richard, I'm going to go to Mike's house. Do you want to come with me?" And I had 2 thoughts in my head at the time. One was, well, that sounds better than what I had planned today. And the other was this bizarre moment where I realized this has never happened before, and I was curious. This is something that, like, literally never happened. He never asked me to hang out with him. And I talked to him, by the way, about this later, and he doesn't even remember it. And he doesn't know why he stopped. He said, the only thing he said to me when I finally told him the story, and I waited a while to tell him, but he said that, he thinks he heard this voice that's in his head. It said, "Why don't you pull over and pick up Richard?" And it wasn't like, you need to pull over and pick up Richard. It was, hey, why don't you pull over and ask him if he wants to come? And it was this weird time when you turn 16. It only lasts for like a month or two, but where you actually enjoy driving. Anyone remember that? And you're like, why not? I'll drive somewhere. Because there was nowhere to go. He didn't call Mike and tell him he was coming. We got to Mike's house, and Mike wasn't there, so we drove home. That was the entire trip. We just drove to Mike's house. Hey, is Mike here? No? Okay. We drove back. We didn't talk about anything important, but I decided that I didn't want to die in that time period. And I still can't tell you exactly why, but if I think back of it, the best that I can come up with is I realize that maybe life isn't as predictable as I thought. Maybe that there's some things coming that I'm not going to see coming that are going to be good. See, we think about the future as almost like always bad. We're worried about our future of what could go wrong. But we never even contemplate that maybe something good is going to happen to you that you haven't thought of. Maybe your circumstance is going to change in a positive way. My dad lived with an alcoholic father, an abusive stepfather, and a very difficult childhood of a broken home for 20 years. He became a Christian in his 20s, and now he's in his 60s. So he's spent 40 years being part of a family of people that love each other, that he created, with God as his Lord, a Father in heaven that loves him. And one of the times I talked to him when he was like in his 50s, and I said, what'd you think about in those first 20 years? And if you could do anything differently, like how would you do it differently? And one of the things he said to me is, he said, honestly, Richard, the only thing I wish is that someone looked at me and said, life isn't always going to be this way. I wouldn't have believed it. But I just wish someone said to me, life isn't going to always be this way. See, there was a turn coming that he didn't see coming. There was this divergement in the road that he couldn't look beyond. And it was this change of his life. And for him, it was not only Jesus, but it was a community of people that loved him. It was a community of people that taught him how to be a man of God and how to live his life to be a good father. And he ended up raising 4 sons that all kind of like each other a lot. And that's why they hang out too much. And it's weird to people. They're like, hey, why do you do all this stuff with your family? Because we like each other. Leave us alone. All right? It's all because my dad at that moment didn't decide to give up. He didn't decide that, yes, I've got it solved. I know what life is, and it's life that's too painful. And I made the same choice because my brother drove me to someone's house who wasn't there. I'm not saying this all makes sense. I'm just saying that in our lives, we've got this one choice to make. And it's whether we're going to seize the day, to YOLO, right? You only live once. But that doesn't mean throw it all away and dive into the obscurity like you're going to Superman into the ditch and just end your life. And it doesn't mean don't do anything because the risks are too big. It means let's look at what the risks are and what the reward is. Again, I know it's the pastor answer, but this book, opening this book up in my life, has been the best risk that I've ever taken. And when I've tested it by living according to it, I found again and again life here. Again and again, not just for me, for so many others. I just open it and I start reading, and there's things that I don't perfectly understand yet. There's yellow lights that are still confusing, but every time I open it up, I find more truth and more love and more life and more fullness. And then next, it's Count of Monte Cristo. No. Next, it's the lives of the people around me. And maybe you're in this place where you want to be this. You want to be this closed book that nobody can see because you feel so broken, and you wonder if anyone will really love you or even like you a little bit if you open up this thing because you've been hurt before. But I'm telling you, you're just going to get judged anyway and more harshly if you just keep it closed. And yes, it takes trust. And yes, but it just takes a little bit of trust. It doesn't take a mountain of trust. You don't have to wait till you figure it out. Wait till you solve it. Wait till everything makes sense to you. You just have to have this little bit of hope that maybe life won't always be this way. Just this little bit of hope, enough to pry it open and to say, hey, this is my story. Do you want to hear? And I can tell you, I 100% can guarantee that there is someone who wants to hear to everyone in this room, because I would love to hear it. And I'm sure I'm not alone. If you would like to hear someone's story in this room, raise your hand. If you want to hear what someone's going on and what's going on in their heart and what's going on in their mind, and you want to find out what they're more like in this room, I just saw a lot of hands raised. Now, yeah, we're not perfect, we're messed up, and we won't be perfect to you either. For that, you're going to have to go into this book. If you want a perfect father, this is the one. But if you want him to have flesh on, we're here too. And we want to know you. And we want you to be part of our family, even if you're broken and it's really going to be hard for you to open up these pages. And even if you're filled with a lot of doubt, and there's only a few things you know, because all you've got to have is just enough hope that you're willing to walk forward even with your doubt. That's it. And that's all you need. I've got doubt. Not over whether there's a God or not. That one, I know. Because I've seen him again and again catch me when I fell. Besides that, I was curious to what the future held. The other thing that kept me going in those dark days was knowing that God was with me. Feeling him, knowing he was there. Now, I know that's not true for everyone, but God wants that to be true for you. And if you keep moving forward, I guarantee it takes time, but he will reveal himself to you. But with that said, there are issues in my life that I'm still unsure about. but I'm unsure about them only so much that I'm still willing to walk forward, still willing to grow, still willing to learn. I still hate yellow lights, though, but I'm willing to put my pedal to the metal and go to the green. We don't know the day and the hour, and at some point, we're going to die. Everyone. At the end of my life, you know what I want to be true of me? That I've loved people. That I've listened to their stories, and that I've learned the most that I could in the time that I was given about the things that really matter. And the things that really matter are the treasures wrapped in here. You've got one, 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 you've got one. All these individual stories that are written in your heart. That's the greatest treasure. And we'd love you to share it with us. Let's pray.